Welcome to the 9th video community of practice meeting. I'm Pankaj Agrawal, founder of Next Software Solutions and working group leader of this community of practice. I would like to apologize for the last month. I messed up and we were not able to have that meeting. So everyone who had to wait, I'm very sorry for that. So let's get started. If anyone is here for the first time, I would like you to introduce yourself. Thanks, John. I think you all have been part of this meeting. So, okay, for the follow-up, last meeting we discussed about single verb versus multiple verbs, and we had decided that we'll use single verb for player interactions and for meta informations, player state informations, except for key actions like play, pause, and maybe skip and stop. Verb was not decided. I had to talk to Jason, and I had a call with Jason, and we discussed on possible best practices related to verb and URL creations. We could not touch on this exact point of which verb to use for interactions with player. So I'll have another call with him to discuss this, probably after we have decisions of the verbs as well. So let's see the agenda for this meeting. One thing I wanted to discuss was, do we need stop as a verb or does pause inform enough for your use cases? Stop as a separate event is not available on YouTube, Vimeo, Kaltura, or even media elements.js. So I'm referring from the LACE project by Adam Cooper. So is there any advantage in having this statement as this thing as an extra statement and as an extra verb?
I can't personally think of an example where that would make sense, or how you would even infer the difference between the two, unless you called stop because a video was unloaded or you moved to a different page, but those could be separate calls, something different, navigation calls. So in my opinion, pauses works just fine. I don't see a reason to have both of them.
Yeah, moving to another page would be probably a different kind of event. We have not thought about it, but I think it is an interesting point. If someone is playing a video and he moves to another tab or another window, and the current window is out of focus, it's an interesting point. And
yeah, that's true. So I guess the last data element would be that they played, right? And there was never an end or completion time. They just sort of kept playing. You could presume that they finished the video, but you wouldn't necessarily know that if they did move to a different page.
So that would be a different thing. If suppose you start the player and you don't come back to it, it would eventually end. So we might have some data going for the end, and even if the video completes, there will be some completion statement. So there will be those information going to the LRS, but talking about focus change, or when the focus is out of the window which has the video, if it gives value, we might need to have a discussion over that. And probably stop tracking and probably.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think to answer to your question, though, at least my answer would be for this particular question, no, I don't see a reason to have both. I think it's the other things we're talking about might be different combinations of events that occur. We can deal with that separately, but I think in this case, pause is fine. Or stop, one of the two.
Yeah, pause. We'll always have a pause verb. So if we can remove stop, it would be great because we don't have to worry about trouble.
I'm cool with that.
Mark, Bill.
Yeah, I was actually just pulling up the standards, and they've just been republished and still in kind of beta form right now. But I think it's where it's going to hit, and it clarifies some of these that we were talking about. So I'll pull that up and I'll share in just a minute. Let me pull it up first.
Okay, great. Bill, your thoughts?
I'm sorry, my thoughts on?
On whether we should have a stop as a verb or should pause be enough for the
I think less verbs is better. Having too many, especially if they are similar in purpose, is in general not a good thing in standards. So yeah, I would go with this one.
Okay, great. So next thing again, similar issue, skip or seek. So should we have this as a verb, or will pause and then play make equal sense? In essence, when you skip, you are kind of pausing from where you left and then playing from where you start back again. According to the LACE project by Adam Cooper, YouTube doesn't have skip as a special event. If you want to figure out if someone skipped, you have to keep polling for position change, and based on that, you can infer whether there was a skip or not. And on Vimeo and Kaltura and media elements, it is available. So as an event, it might be available in several players, but still again, probably pause and then play might make equal sense for most use cases. But if you can think of something that would get impacted, we can keep skip or seek as a separate verb.
I don't know. I guess I still prefer skip and seek only because it's a different mental action that's happening. It's somebody is intentionally doing something different than just watching the video. They're literally seeking for something, which just infer. But I get what you're saying, that this could get calculated by using the pause and play, the play and pause functions themselves to infer based on the time code. But I guess I don't like the concept of having to perform the extra calculation for it, and because then that filters to other things as well, right? Because now progress gets a little more complicated to figure out as well, and it could still be done. It's not that hard, but I personally like the concept of skip and seek specifically because it is a mental choice to do something, not just of a way of interacting with the content. And so because of that, I like it as its own discrete verb that can be described as something and understood and researched within that context. But again, I get that you can just calculate it and it's sort of all the same. But personally, I would like to keep the verb in there, but that's my opinion. I'll defer to the group's opinion though.
I agree. I think the whole purpose of having a standard like this is that you can record learner behavior and know what they did. And this is definitely something they would be doing with video, is rewinding it and looking at and jumping ahead. So, and I wouldn't be too concerned about whether or not YouTube supports it or not. It's a very common event in a lot of video component technology, so I don't see it being a problem.
I wouldn't be surprised in the end if we need to make some sort of Chromeless adaptation for the video player to deal with xAPI anyways, because I'm not sure you would want to have a different container for every service type. I mean, I understand that it gets complicated then because each API calls it differently, but using something like Video.js and just changing the translation of the API calls to specific verbs would be ultimately more efficient, I think, than creating a separate browser type each way. And so then if you use Video.js or some similar tool, then you can introduce skip and seek as functionality, even if it's not in the API call for the video provider specifically.
Yeah, I agree. My point in bringing this up was not calling it as a challenge for doing it, but the entire point was removing an extra verb. Now, from my point of view, if we remove seek, in terms of reporting, it will simplify calculating progress, because you would anyway need to process pause and play for calculating progress, because user always has this option to pause the video and then play it at different locations. So seek would be the same thing, but happening at the same time. So if we want to report seek in itself, it is possible to check if both things happen together. But yes, there would be one extra calculation there. Whereas if we introduce seek, we would have to do some extra calculation for progress calculation. So to calculate progress, we would need to do a little extra calculation, because we would need to process 3 verbs.
Yeah, so I guess I'm coming from this from the education sort of research perspective, and I guess to me it makes sense to keep the verb. From maybe a data infrastructure, I don't have a good position to speak on for this, so maybe it does for speed purposes or simplicity make sense to remove it and calculate it out. I don't know, and so I'll defer on that. But I think from a research perspective, it's a little easier for people to, maybe for my camp of people, to understand it as a separate event. But that's all I'll say about it.
I'm sorry I'm not able to pull up everything that I've just seen like the past couple of days, and I'll find them in a minute. I've got a lot of things going on right now. I've been trying to learn code, so give me a minute. I'll give you when I get to it. So I'm digging. Hang on. Y'all go ahead with the meeting though.
Okay, no problem.
I mean, the extra calculation shouldn't be a problem, right? Unless you're like a video serving service and you're dealing with, presumably thousands or hundreds of thousands of videos. Otherwise, on a simple educational page of some kind where content exists, then 1 or 2 videos or whatever you won't really even see an impact on the calculation, as I would assume at least.
Yeah. So calculation should not be a problem. There is the total. The entire thing is about whether should we have one extra verb, or should we send two statements for one statement. So there is advantage of removing seek, because then we have one less verb to worry about, and there is a disadvantage that we'll be sending 2 different verbs.
Okay, so just to reiterate that, the choice here is between the extra complexity of another verb, which will just build over time, or less descriptiveness, I guess, in the verb itself. Is that right?
Yeah, it's between extra verb or
So again, to me, how many verbs are we at right now? I don't recall. It's been a while since I've looked at the full list.
we'll have only few verbs, maybe play, pause.
Okay. Well, I know it's a slippery slope, but to me, I think the word is worth keeping. But that's my opinion. So.
Okay. So what about others? Will what do you say? Will, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing. What was the question?
Should we have skip or seek as a separate verb, or should we?
Oh, you
pause?
mean divide them? Yeah, skip and seek are the same function to me.
Yes, skip and seek are same function. So we'll use one of them, but if we use, and we could instead remove it and have a pause and then a play. So there would be two statements for one statement, but we would be removing one verb.
So I'm sorry, the question is whether or not to get rid of skip seek?
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't get rid of skip or seek. I give it one name, but I wouldn't get rid of it. If you want to record user behavior, seeking is different than pausing and playing, as we discussed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So we'll keep it. And so which verb should we use, skip or seek? What makes better sense?
I think seek is probably the more appropriate one.
Okay, great. John, you agree?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Use seek.
Yeah, I think seek is closer to what's actually happening there from a word perspective, I guess. I'm not sure how much that matters, but.
So next. What should happen when a user reaches the end position in the video? Do we need a verb ended to mean reaching the end position, or paused would make equal sense? So paused would have will have extra metadata which will tell the current position when you pause, and we would also have the metadata which would tell the length of the video. So length of the video and the position where you paused would be same. So calculation wise, if you send a pause and both information where you pause, it is as good as end. So should we have a separate verb for it, or it is enough? Paused is enough.
I think you should have a verb for playing to the end, because again, that's a sort of user behavior. If they seek and they go to the end of the video, I think that's less important. But you know, video is a linear piece of media, and you want to know how the user interacted with it. So, did he watch? You know, which segments did he watch, and did he watch it to the end?
Yeah, but if we send a paused verb, it would give the exact information that we want. It's just about choosing if we want a separate verb for it.
So it would have the same meaning?
Yeah, when the verb contains the metadata where it tells where it was paused, and it also tells the length of the video. So with that statement, you can get the meaning you want.
Okay. Well, I developed a video player once it used AICC tracking. One of the challenges I had was I wanted to ensure, because it was in a regulatory environment, I wanted to ensure they saw the whole thing. And I allowed them to jump around, but I also kept track of what parts they didn't see and what they did see. And they would have to see all of it in order to get completion. So with these set of verbs, can you do something like that?
Yeah, that is what we had discussed earlier, and we had kind of consensus that we should track progress, and progress would mean exact consumption of the video, the percentage of video consumed. So we would be tracking how much part of the video is consumed, and then we would need to add up all the information to get the exact percentage use
to get the evaluation. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have a verb in this profile to indicate completion then?
We will have a verb for completion, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you have a different. Okay. So that's a different verb. All right. So okay. Yeah. Sure. That sounds fine. Then a reaching the end of the video verb is not required then.
Yeah. That was the entire point. If someone goes through the entire video, at the end he will get a completed statement as well. Okay, so I'll say we don't require.
I don't have anything to add to that other than I agree with this decision. Just remove it.
Great. Bill, do you agree?
Yes.
So next point was the idea of progress. I think me and Bill had a discussion over this already. So I think John, you can give your suggestion. I think you already agreed that we can add a progress metadata to every statement we send to the LRS, which will contain percentage of video consumed, and it will be calculated based on the activity of the user. If he has skipped around, paused, played, all of that information has to be calculated by the script sending data, and it has to send this progress metadata along with the statements.
The metadata is living in the statement itself?
Yeah.
In the verb statement? Okay.
It's part of results. It's part of the xAPI results.
Oh, in that section? Okay.
Within a statement, yeah. Statement has different portions. One portion indicates the verb, another portion indicates the object, and there's an area called results.
So just so I understand the progress here, right? I'm a student, page comes up, I press play. So starting the video, presumably there either is no metadata or the metadata for progress is 0% at that point. If at some point 20% through the video I press pause, you're saying the pause statement's going to have a progress metadata of 20% or some number, something. within the results portion of the statement?
Yeah.
Is that
Yes.
what is that the progress?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and progress is a percent.
Okay. So then to get total progress, I need to look at whatever the last statement was submitted for interaction with that specific object.
Oh, not necessarily. It's possible if you're watching the video multiple times, or you might have more than 1%.
So percentage, so, okay, so then progress here would be a total percentage of the content watched sort of generically, not necessarily from beginning to end. So I could have 200% progress, but have never made it through the entire video. Is that right?
No. I wouldn't map progress that way. I'd map it based on what you've seen. So if you've seen all of it multiple times, and you've seen it all within that session, I would still say 100%.
Okay, so let me give another use case here. I'm at 0%, I press play, I go to 20%, I press pause, and let's say I skip, or I pause, I skip back to 0, and I press play again. So now I'm watching it again from the beginning because I wanted to watch that first 20%. So
right, but you've already seen half of it. So you know, I wouldn't put progress at 0%. I'd put progress at 50%.
Yeah, so it will be concatenation of the entire information. So if you go from 0 to 20 and come back to 10 and go to 20 again, it will be still 20. And
okay,
after
so
you reach to 30,
progress is not position. Progress is how much you've seen.
right. Okay, so you're going to have to store that data somewhere off and then calculate the progress to put into the statement. Okay.
And there's a state API where you can do that. So the internal bookkeeping of the video presentation can be done with the state API.
So yes,
I haven't actually worked with the state API, so that sounds awesome for me to learn. So I would love to see that done, so I can learn from it.
Look at xapi.vocab.pub. xapi.vocab.pub. That's on Twitter right now, but I don't know what that's actually how hot that is. But I'd say forbidden because it's not going the right way.
Yeah, I got forbidden as well.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I'm seeing that actually I got it from a message from one of the guys who's working on it. I think he's in Germany, and they're working on it, and they had again, I got it to a Twitter feed, and it's the ADL verbs. Let me see what else I can do with this.
Here, there's this. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
You put ontology at the end, it comes up.
Yeah, so let me get on that because I kind of set that down on my phone, but it's still working on the laptop.
So to summarize, state API will store state of any attempt. So for a specific user, for a specific activity, it can store a state information.
Yeah, I've read through the spec description on GitHub or wherever it's at. I think it's GitHub. I just haven't actually used it myself yet. So that sounds, yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me if that's how you guys want to do it. I would love to see that done so I could understand the code on it.
So apart from
the other benefit of that is going to be able to get with it tracking with a xAPI statement. It also has the metering and you can stop and end. It tracks the minutes that you're using, and if you stop, it remembers how long you were there. If you start it again, it starts the timer again. It stops it, it gets that time, so it stacks those times up. So if you're in that one xAPI statement or one class or whatever, you're going to see where there's cuts and how they've added and they've stacked them back up, and you get more information, and you would see that in a visual graph that you would see that that's where you had people tried more interest trying to learn that, and then at the end of it, you'd see the pie graph that through that. Oh yeah, this is where one had it good, the other guy didn't get the information right. So That's where the benefit of all this xAPI stuff fits greatly.
So I guess we could use a string something like this for storing to the state API. It'll be from where you started and then to where you paused, and then again from where you started and then where you paused. There'll be a comma between each pause and play. This is a comma, this is a dot. And for every play and pause, it will keep adding appending to the string and sending it to state API.
Yeah, I think that sure, that makes sense to me. I think it's the whole progress percentage thing would be interesting. I still kind of go back mentally to the image of that we talked about, I think last time, or maybe it was the time before. It was the sort of the heat map over the timeline of the video, and it looks like you could probably do that easily with this if each block was some, one layer of the color that goes over that particular timeline area.
Yeah, so this string could be used to create a heat map, like you said. And if it makes sense, we can also add a total progress percentage along with the string in the state API data.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So it could be something like progress. Maybe we could do something like this, or we can add some name to it. What do we call this string? Heat map, or is there a better name for it?
Maybe I can't think of one. It makes sense to me.
Bill, can you suggest a better name, or is it good?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
When storing data to the state API, we could have a string like this. Do you see this string written?
Yeah, I see the string. Yeah, in the state API, you can put whatever you want in. It can be a JSON document. Actually, I think it doesn't even have to be JSON. So it can be whatever you want. Probably be a best practice to use a JSON structure.
Yeah, so I have written.
I think the example is not a good one with regards to putting the word progress in there, because progress is a word used in other parts of the spec. So that might cause some confusion if you're using that as an example.
Progress.
There is a progress property in the xAPI spec. I mean, in general, your example is just fine. I'm just saying that if you're making examples, you might not want to use, reserved words or words that are used as attributes in the spec, because people might get them confused. It's perfectly legal, though.
Right, but it might mess up your graphing and your data analysis.
Well, the state API isn't used for reporting. It's used for the learning activity to do its own internal bookkeeping. So it's pretty much an opaque data element that you can write anything you want to. So it's really up to the implementer. With regards to reporting, that should be stuff that should be more scrutinized in statements. So if you're defining, as we're defining verbs and what attributes go in results, and if you have or if you're planning on having any extensions, that's the area where you should focus on for reporting. The state API is just a scratch pad for the learning activity.
Yeah, but it can be used for creating heat maps, so it will be a useful information that we'll have.
Sure. If your profile is going to go into more detail on what they do with these state APIs, then I guess that's up to you. But state API is pretty much intended to be just a generalized work area for the activity designer.
Anyway, as we this will be part of the spec, and so should we name it? Should we name this string as heat map or something else? Is there a better name to it? The string which contains the data of each progress, from where a user started and then paused and then started again and then paused.
So wait a second. Am I given to understand that you're actually going to actually spec that out?
Yeah.
Is that necessary for interoperability?
Yes. It might not be. Wait. Yes.
I can't see how it is, because unless it's the what you'd have to. I mean, what are you trying to be interoperable with?
Okay, let me think. If a player is sending data and it wants to report progress, or as per the spec, he has to report progress. So to report progress, you need the heat map and heat map information, and without that, you cannot calculate progress. So you need to store it in the state API.
So who's calculating the progress?
Okay, yes. In this case, it will be players. So you are right. There will be no interoperability issues here.
Right.
Then the next.
So what I'm saying is, why do you need to spec it? I mean, you could let the whoever, if the idea is you want interoperability between a genre of players and a.
Hello. Hello.
I'm still here.
Yep. Bill, are you there? Hello. Hello.
Hello, sorry, got kicked out or something.
Okay. Bill, are you there? So I think there would be one one more use case where
can you hear me now?
yep.
Okay. What I was saying was there's no interoperability problem to be solved with recording state information.
Yeah, for the player, there would be no interoperability issues, but there might be reporting tools that would want to plot the heat map.
That's not the intention of the state API. If you want to plot, a heat map or something for reporting purposes, then you need to put that stuff into the statement, not the state API. You need to add that to extension.
This is Mark. At the core of the xAPI and the creation of it, the notion of it was for an individual and a system did something. I did this. So having that information tracked to a person, an individual, or a group, and having done something and saying they did this. A tracking system that keeps a record of I did this. And if I attended a class, that's one. If I passed a class, if I stopped it, I started it, if I stopped it, if I went back, and all the way, everything. So a tracking system sitting on top of any of the content that we're providing gives us the ability to do I did this.
I'm sorry, if you repeat that, my connection just dropped again.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, just going down to just the foundation of xAPI, it's the tracking of I did this, whether that's the individual or a system or a group did something, and then whatever that is they did. I did this. I watched this. I started this. I completed this. I shared this. There are known verbs that we're getting close to having those stabilized, and that's where we get the benefit of having to be ability to do not only at the individual level, saying, "Hey, you person, you didn't really get that right. Here's where we see some holes in what you were trying to do, and here's where we've got an opportunity as a training opportunity for that individual or for that group." And then that's the goal of why we're trying to get xAPI set up.
Okay. What's the point again?
To validate that the training that was done had a benefit.
Right. No. But I thought we were talking about recording a heat map and putting it in the state API, and then somebody mentioned wanting to use that heat map for reporting purposes.
Well, the heat map, I don't really understand the heat map. I mean, that's basically, are you saying, what do you say heat map?
Well, Prakash put up an example with a heat map to show progress, and they were suggesting putting it in the state API. And basically the point I was trying to make is that's not what the state API is for. You can, in addition to the I did this part of the statement, a statement also has areas where you can put in results data and extensions data. So if you want to add some additional data to go with that verb statement, you can put your own extensions in there. So you could put something like a heat map in there.
Right. And that being said, there's what the rest of, again with ADL, they've created communities of practice, because some of the things you're raising issues that, hey, maybe there's some gaps in the hole that we've set up, and we built it so that it would be with some flexibility. The answer to that is communities of practice, where we combine like minds together and say, hey, we all have the same issue. We want to try and get this to the standard, so it can go forward. We can reuse that information. And community practice, they're raising some issues, and they're kind of changed some things, but it's going to be like you're kind of mentioning an extension, and that's certainly a possibility from what I see. I mean, God knows it's not me, but that's what it looks like. They're going to use shared information to try and understand where there are holes and where there are opportunities where we might need to change some things through communities of practice, which community of practice would be managed going forward. So there's the standard, xAPI standard itself, but then on top of that, community of practice, where there might be some additional things that a particular group or community of practice has needs that doesn't really share across the globe, but maybe specific individuals that are shared with other groups like mine. So there's flexibility there. So that's where maybe some of these issues and questions might fit best. But again, going back to the I did this, let's try and make sure at least we can do that so we can find the gaps of learning. One other thing, any of the existing content, like a lot of us are very familiar with SCORM, and a lot of the content has been, okay, so we built the content that's using SCORM statements. And that SCORM was kind of, I attended the class, I'm the person who did it, I passed or failed, yes or no. And that's about it. But now with the ability to use xAPI, the question is, God, what do we do with all that old content? They've created a converter that takes that existing content, runs it to a system, a program, runs a program, and it quickly transfers into xAPI statements on the fly. So the other big concern has been, what do we do with all this existing SCORM content? There's a tool to fix it. And that's actually public right now. So anyway.
The entire idea is to make it interoperable. So as long as this is required to maintain interoperability, it is required to. If it is not required for interoperability, we could leave it to the people who are implementing it. So I agree that if it is not required, we would probably want to leave it. But we want to report the heat map because it is one of the use cases that we had already discussed on several instances. You would need to figure out the best way to do it. If we don't want to use the state API for persistently storing this information, we would have to figure out the right way to send it in the statement. In that case, it would be probably in paused statement, maybe completed statement. At least paused. Every time you pause, you need it, and you need it on peak as well. Every time this heat map data changes, you need this data to those. You would still need to decide what. You don't have a better suggestion, could be it goes into the statement. Result. Have a extensive data information. Do you agree Bill, are you there?
Yes,
Do you agree to what I said?
I'm really having a hard time hearing you. Can you speak up?
Okay. Is it better now?
A little.
Is it better? Is it better now? Hello.
It's easier for me. Yeah, you've
Okay.
definitely gotten a lot louder, although his audio just dropped.
Okay, no problem. So
Good. I'm sorry, my audio keeps dropping.
no problem. So yes, I was saying that if we don't want to specify how players do it, if it is not required for interoperability, we could leave the state API thing, but still we might need to add this information as part of the statements. And if we add it to the statements, we would need to add it to at least paused, seek, and completed. And,
yeah, that makes sense. If you want to report on something, it's a statement. If you're for the state API, that's for internal bookkeeping. So yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, and in that case, what do you think heat map is a good name for this information, or should we?
I think if it makes sense to you, it's fine. It'll be located inside extension, so it can be called whatever you want. I think it's a good name in that it doesn't conflict with any other attribute name, so it won't be confused with anything else.
As long as it makes sense, we can keep it, because this will be part of the spec. So
yeah, I think that's fine. You'll create an extension. You'll call it heat map. You might want to consider putting it in a, well, let's see. You might want to bring up an example statement and see if I can find something. Hold on just a minute. Let me see if I can find something in CMI 5.
it'll be in result extensions.
Well, you have to, let's see, content, state. Just a minute here. I'm looking for a context template. You might want to put something, you might want to organize your extension in such a way that it won't have any, you know, here we go, content.
I think your audio dropped again.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we aren't able to see that ADL, that the verb that's just been, like, last week has been updated, and that really needs to be in front of everybody. The specific objects are in there, and we could bounce them around them, and we'd have a lot better understanding of what's going there. Unfortunately, we can't really see it right now.
Okay.
It's public. It's on ADL, and I'd say.
Anyway, it's not a problem. We can cite that later. So anyway, it will be part of result extensions, and we'll have to have a URI, but general name could be something like heatmap. Next thing I wanted to discuss was whether we should store key milestones like 25% completion and 50% completion and 75% completion as a separate verb called progress.
Sorry, dropped again. I don't think I can complete a sentence without losing audio.
Were you able to hear during
No.
this time?
No, it dropped. Basically, what I was saying was that what you have there for your extension, that would be a value. So that heat map and everything you're showing there on your notepad, that would be like in your state API example, would be inside a curly brackets, and that would be a JSON object. That would be the value, and then the extension will have an ID of an IRI.
And this will be URI.
No. You have it's URI : and then
whatever, it will be a URI, and it could be a long URI.
It's a name value pair. The name is the URI : and then the value would be the JSON structure.
It might be like this purl.org/xAPI/video. It could be something like that.
Yeah, and then then colon, and then the JSON structure. See, that way it's
so yes. John, what do you think about having a separate verb for welcome back again?
Sorry.
So yes, the next thing I wanted to ask was, should we have a separate verb for key intermediate milestones like 25% completion and 50% completion and 75% completion?
I guess from some sort of my camp's perspective here, I don't see a value for us since the percentages are somewhat arbitrary. I mean, they're in quarters, but I don't know what those mean in relation to learning itself. So I don't. I know our group necessarily won't have a need for something like that unless we can tie specific learning events or thoughts or something related to learning to those discrete values or any value that fits within that. So I would say, since progress itself is not necessarily a discrete connection to learning in and of itself, I don't see a need for the addition of the verb or the value.
I agree, and yes, it can anyway be calculated by the reporting tool. It has all the heat map and other information, so it might not be useful to add it. So fine, time for today's call is over, and I think we can leave it at this today, and for the next meeting we can discuss more on finalizing the verbs and finalizing other metadata and structure. So it's great that we have made a lot of progress in this meeting, and I hope we'll be able to finalize this spec soon. Thanks, John and Bill and Tazia, for joining this call. See you in the next call on see you in the next call next month, first Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Thanks for keeping the group going and arranging the meetings.
Thanks for joining the call. Have a good day. Bye.